so excited to have Angie Boiles with us today talking about culinary and medicinal mushrooms. Glad y'all came out this morning. Angelina Boiles, owner of Garden of Love, grew up in Hot Springs, Arkansas. She spent 2 years in North Carolina managing an herb farm where she received extensive training in mushroom cultivation, as well as growing a variety of different culinary medicinal herbs. Angie moved back to Hot Springs area in 2020, where she started her farm specializing in mushrooms for local restaurants, along with cultivation of herbs for her line of herbal preparations. You can find Angelina at local farmers markets and online at Garden of Love 501. So if you will, welcome Angie Boiles.
Thank you for coming. I'm very grateful that a lot of people, showed up. A lot of people need to know more about medicinal and culinary mushrooms. So yes, I'm Angie Boiles. My business is Garden of Love. I am local, and I have a background in criminal justice. I received a degree out of the University of Memphis in 2015, pivoted into farming around 2018, and started managing an herb farm about 2019, where I did learn about 1,000 different species of native and medicinal herbs, and a person there who was a mycologist who is an expert with mushrooms. If y'all don't know what a mycologist is, he had some logs set in the back with some shiitake growing out of it. And it just opened my eyes up to growing fungus out of logs for yourself. With the herb farm, we went to various different activities and events to learn more about growing, doing organic methods of soil preparation. And so with that, we went to a conference that was called Feast Down East, and it was a local food conference, and there was someone putting on a mushroom log workshop. And that's where I started to develop more of the knowledge on how to produce it for myself. But then I took it upon myself to investigate more into where else I could go to receive more knowledge about what I wanted to do. So I found the Organic Growers School out of Mars Hill, North Carolina. And they had what was the spring conference, and they still have it every year, where it teaches people about farming, mushroom growing, sustainable living, and agriculture in itself. Very neat if any of y'all want to research it. But I took a class there with Trad Cotter. He's a very well-known mycologist. He is out of South Carolina, but he has written a book on organic mushroom farming and how to do it yourself. All the steps on how to, do bag preparation, log preparation, etc. on that. So that's really where I picked up more of the passion to learn more about mushrooms. So I started, so I moved here in 2020, and then I started my business in 2021. And then now I am at the farmer's market selling herbal preparations as well as mushroom preparations and fresh fruit. So I do collaborate with a friend on providing fresh oyster mushrooms and lion's mane mushrooms, which I do have some up here just so everyone can see. And this is a mushroom log itself from one of my workshops. But yes, so a little bit about the facts on mushrooms. And this is just a little bit of a world of mushrooms. But mushrooms have their own kingdom and the kingdom of fungi. They are more closely related to animals than plants in their structures. They exhale CO2, breathe in oxygen. Pretty neat. There are estimated 2.2 to 3.8 million species of fungi on Earth, of which only 4% have been documented. So that just tells you how much more we have to learn about fungus and what we can do with it. So there are more than 270 identified fungal species, with therapeutic properties being the medicinal parts of the mushrooms. The oldest recorded record of mushrooms as medicine dates back to 300 BC. And the largest mushroom in the world is a honey mushroom out of Oregon, and it's football fields long, spreads it long. So yeah, pretty neat to just put that in your mind. You know, underneath us is a whole network of mycelium. So, and I will ask if people can hold questions to the end, kind of like just write it in your phone or something, because I know there's a lot of them. All right, so a little bit about the definition of the definitions that are associated with mushrooms. So chitin is something, it's an important vocabulary that I have to explain to people at the farmer's market a lot, because they'll ask me, do I have to cook this mushroom? And a lot of us, you know, have eaten salad with raw mushrooms, you know, raw button mushrooms on it. Well, the answer is you can eat raw mushrooms. I don't suggest to, but you can. If you cook it though, or add heated water to mushrooms, that breaks down what's called chitin. So chitin is the cell structure that mushrooms are made out of, and you only are able to break it down with heat itself. It's not bioavailable to our bodies otherwise. So we get a little bit of the medicinal benefits, but not all of them in that way. So mycelium is the network of hyphae that's underneath the ground. So that is the network that connects mushrooms to trees, to other plants as well. Very important. So the vegetative part of the mushroom itself. So mycorrhizae, some of y'all are, well, a lot of y'all are gardeners, so I'm sure some of y'all have heard about the mycorrhizal network and the association between the roots of the plants and fungus and what it does for the plants itself. So if you use mushrooms or have mushrooms in your garden, it's always a good thing to keep them there. I don't suggest you trying to eat them or anything, but they add something for your garden that the plants can't otherwise receive. It makes the nutrients more available for the mushroom, for the plants as well as the mushroom. Very neat connection. So there's ecto and endo mycorrhizae. Ecto is 5% of plants, and endo being 80 to 95% of plants. So that is like the symbiotic relationship of the fungus and the plant roots itself. So that kind of gives you a good idea on how important it is to have a network, fungus network, mycelium network in your garden, because a lot of plants need it. There's only, it's about 5% of mainly the Brassica family that do not need fungus in order to be able to make, sugars and whatnot, more sugars and starches more available for the plant. But all the rest, like trees and plants itself, they all need fungus in order to even survive. And actually, like Paul Stamets is a very well-known mycologist, and he elaborates on how the trees wouldn't be as tall as they are now unless fungus came along. They wouldn't be able to decompose themselves, and so they just be piled up places, and they wouldn't be able to expand the network of talking to one another that's underground. Because what the mycelium does, it also connects it like a pathway to the trees and the plants, and it sends out signals if there's a disease or a pathogen of any sort to say, hey, this is about to happen, put up your defenses. So, yeah, any of y'all want to dive deeper into that? It's, we're learning more every day about it. The fruiting body of the mushroom itself, so that is pretty much what I sell here. So you'll see like the cap and the stem, that is like the fruiting body of a mushroom. So the hyphae are the branches, the filaments that make up the mycelium. So the hyphae are just like the strands. Mycelium is the whole network of the strands. Spores. So spores are like the seeds of plants. So spores, they come out from the cap itself. And so, in the grow, like in my grow, for those of y'all that haven't foraged as well, I can like just see on the shelves or on the racks itself, like a white, dusty surface, or, just depending, sometimes like with chestnut mushrooms or shiitake, it can be brown, which are the spores. So that's kind of like the fingerprints for them. That's their, where you get their DNA itself. So pretty neat to see. You can take spores and get a spore print. So like if you're out in the woods and you're trying to identify mushrooms, I always bring a piece of paper with me. And then if I don't know a mushroom, I will put that piece of paper, I'll put the cap on the piece of paper. And just, travel with it. And over a little bit of time, it'll give you a color on the piece of paper. And then it gives you more of an indication as to what kind of mushroom it is. Because a lot of mushrooms can look the same, but not every one of them has the same spore print. So just like us, we have like different prints on our fingers. So mushrooms are, they are haploid, in being that they only have half of the number of chromosomes required for reproduction. So you need multiple spores in order to make a mushroom. So you can't just take one spore and make a mushroom. It needs some help. So this is the fungal life cycle. Kind of gives you a visual as to what's happening underneath the ground as well. So as I just define all of that, you got the fruiting body, that spore out, all the spores coming from the middle of it. I guess I can do this here. So the spores will land on a surface of some sort, and it'll go back into the soil itself, start to make hyphae, which is the mycelium network itself. And then the hyphae grow into the mycelium, which goes into the fruit itself. And so that's like the mating of different spores. You have to have 2 different spores at least, more than in order to germinate into a fruiting body. Okay, so there's different varieties of mushrooms. Well, every mushroom requires different nutrients. So when I started to go out in the forest and learn about where to get mushrooms, I started, acknowledging that there were different ways that the mushrooms grow off of surfaces, being trees or the ground or roots. As well. So saprophytic and parasitic fungi get their nutrients by the decomposing organic matter, but parasitic can, it'll break down organic matter of living species itself. So if y'all have heard of cordyceps, a couple of y'all, so yeah, it is, the nuance of mushrooms itself and being that you can actually grow it on, an ant or a caterpillar or something to that effect. Mycorrhizal kind of went over that, but the mycorrhizal mushrooms are, so those are the ones that you'll see just like in leaf matter, away from trees and debris. Well, I say debris, not debris, but away from trees. So sometimes you'll see mushrooms on a dead tree or a living tree, but then sometimes you'll just see mushrooms on the ground that, it's like, how is it growing? So those are more of the mycorrhizal fungus, morels, chanterelles, black trumpet, the kimbolete, which is the porcini. It all is dependent on the ecosystem around it in order to be able to produce the fruit. So mycelium may be underneath the soil itself, but in order to produce a fruity body, it has to have certain variables from the surrounding area itself. So morels, like there are a variety of morels called burn morels, and with those, you have to burn an area a couple of years prior to seeing the morels. So just another different method that fungus has picked up along the way in order to be able to survive in the elements that we give it. So NWA is fungus that lives within the plant leaf tissue. Doesn't cause any harm to the host, but it's just like us, we have fungus in us, but like if our immune system is down, sometimes we'll see that, but most of the time it's not going to show up. So there's 1 million species of those that live in plants. Okay, so different cultivation methods. I was going to bring a bag today and I wasn't able to, so I apologize, but you'll see a couple of pictures with the bag method itself. The log method being like this right here. So this is a mushroom log, and you'll see it has like holes in it that are waxed. So those will grow into a mushroom eventually once all the food is eaten up. That's a signal to produce fruit. But this was just plugged in March, so we got a little bit more time on it. But it's a pretty easy method of being able to produce food at your house for a good price. I put on mushroom log workshops and teach people how to do it themselves. I will be putting on one in like 3 weeks, so just keep track of my Facebook and Instagram, and I'll upload like when that's going to be, because it's really neat. You get to learn a lot from people as well. So yeah, that's one way of it. You can also do the bag method. And I didn't even put that on there. I apologize. Well, growing mushrooms in bags is what I do for the commercial grow itself. So you essentially you make your food, which is like wood and a grain of sort. And as long as you got the nutrient recipe for whatever mushroom you're producing, then you're able to let the mycelium myceliate that bag, and then you can cut a hole in it. And then as long as it's provided oxygen, enough moisture, it will start to produce fruit. So that's how I get this fruit right here. The oyster mushroom here. So this came out of a bag itself. And so it's clean. You don't wash mushrooms. Out in the forest, you can wash those mushrooms and cook off the water, but If it's not buggy, I say, go with it. It's got all the minerals and vitamins that you need. So I use leftover spawn bags in my garden beds. Like I was going over earlier, fungus and plants have a connection to one another in order for them to be more successful in what they're doing, producing. So yeah, garden or chip beds, you can use different methods. So like the spawn bags itself, or you can get like some substrate or liquid culture, and you can like inoculate is another term, the wood itself or leaf matter or cardboard. Like you can use cardboard, put the spawn in between it, and then put leaf matter on top of it and be able to produce fruit that way too. Really good for your garden beds. So the bucket method, I have not done the bucket method. I've been around people that have done it. It's kind of a messy situation, but you can use like a 5-gallon bucket and cut holes on the side of it. And as long as you got the preparation inside good, it's able to produce fruit that way too. And the fruit will like come out of the holes of the bucket. So if you're interested, you can YouTube it more on the bucket method. All right. So those are a couple of different ways, but there are more being discovered every day. And this is kind of, so when I went to the organic grower school and went to the class with Trav Carter, it was on microremediation. And so he went over the chip beds and elaborated on it, but it was essentially like what you're doing is you're giving the soil all the trace minerals and goodies that it needs to survive. So with mushrooms, like they can clean up oil spills. They can clean up, toxins out of our environment. They do the same for us in our gut biome. So that's why mushrooms, one of the reasons mushrooms are so important for you is because of what they do internally for us. They not only provide trace minerals and nutrients, macronutrients, but they clean up anything that no longer serves us and they'll turn it into something good. So that's why I always tell people to keep mushrooms in their diet, whether it be in tincture form, in a tea form, or eating fresh fruit. It's definitely beneficial, and especially right now, and the last 3 years with everything going on with COVID and whatnot. So there's different varieties of mushrooms. Polypod and guild are going to be your two big classes of mushrooms itself. So turkey tail, reishi, chicken of the woods, lion's mane, those are all polypore mushrooms, being multiple pores on the surface area of the cap itself. You got your guild, like the oyster I just showed y'all, chestnut, king oyster, enoki, shiitake, some of you are familiar with that, and maitake. And then there's different classifications of that being, gills attached to the stem or the gill, it's non-attached gills. And I'm going to say that most, well, I'm not going to say most, in my grow at least, I have mostly gilled except for the lion's mane, but most of the other ones, it takes longer to grow them. So it has, those are ones that I would get out in the woods, like the turkey tail. Reishi, we cut some of that down now. And reishi is this one right here. I had a friend pick this out of his, on his farm. It's super neat. I've never seen the mushrooms so connected, but This is reishi. It's also called the mushroom of immortality, and that it helps every organ in our body. It's something that hits, anything that people come to me about, I can say, why don't you try this? And it's going to help them in some way. So, and that's a polypore mushroom, and many pores. So this is turkey tail. Some of y'all have probably heard about turkey tail in cancer research, cancer prevention research and treatment. It is a mushroom as well as reishi, but turkey tail is a little above it with what they've researched to prevent and treat cancer. Paul Stamets has a wonderful video on turkey tail mushroom and what it did for his mother. She had stage 4 breast cancer, and the doctors were like, yeah, she's not coming back from this. And he said, no, that's not going to happen. I'm going to see what this mushroom can do. So I think it was just her that was running the research project itself, but and all the rest of them she took the chemo drugs, but she took this as well. She took the turkey tail as well, whereas the other patients did not. And she is still living, whereas the others, they all passed eventually. So this was, I think it was maybe 8 or 9 years ago, but it is in a good documentary to watch, Fantastic Fungi. If y'all haven't seen it, it's a Netflix and Amazon, something to that effect, plays it now, but just super neat video or documentary explaining more on mushrooms. So this is another variety on the left here of turkey tail. And you see there's blue, and then there's this one here that's brown. And I have read, I haven't dove deep into it, but I've read that, of course, different colors mean that the mushroom with plants too, they have different compounds in them. So I'm not sure, which one has more or less, but there is research to back that up to say it's got more or less of the good compounds in there to prevent and treat cancer, build immune system, abdominal inflammation. So this one is reishi, another variety that I just showed y'all. So this is growing out of a bag. This is the plastic bags, the bag method that I was talking about. And this is actually Track Hotter's business, Mushroom Mountain, out of Easley, South Carolina. And he does do workshops, and you can do farm tours as well. So if you're ever out in South Carolina, look that up. It's pretty easy to go out to one of his events. I don't think that he runs many of them anymore, but a couple of his assistants do. So this is not a mushroom. I thought it was really neat when I was, researching turkey tails. I was like, oh, that's perfect. Because it kind of even has like the color of the turkey tails, for all you Arkansans. This is lion's mane. So lion's mane mushroom has been known to treat Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, among numerous other areas of our body, but mostly our brain. So it regenerates neurons and nerves in our body. So anyone with nerve damage, I suggest to get lion's mane in your system some way. It's not only good for us though, it's really tasty. It almost, some people would say it has kind of a lobster taste to it. And it does, these mushrooms do have like a seafoody taste and smell to them, but I say it's whatever spice you put it with, whatever you're cooking up. So a lot of people make lion's mane crab cakes, which is awesome because you can like peel lion's mane and it comes out in like lump crab form. So
What is-
it it makes your brain think otherwise too. So
What is the name of that one?
lion's mane.
Lion's Mane.
Uh-huh. Kind of looks like a lion's mane. Or Hericium erinaceus, and those are actually the two compounds, two of the compounds that do help to regenerate neurons in the brain and nerves in the body. So this is oyster mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms come in a wide variety of colors. This is the golden oyster. This is a black oyster. Y'all can't really tell up there though. This is a blue. Again, the different colors kind of indicate that it's got more or less of something. But it's also kind of a flashy way of being able to sell your product too. So people have cultivated it enough to get different colors out of the oyster mushrooms. But this is a gill mushroom. So you can see the gills here a little bit. I should have made it a little bigger, but so that is like an attached gill right there. And oyster mushrooms, you can thinly slice those up and add them to any dish as well. I like putting them in stir fry or rice dishes, pasta dishes, and my eggs in the morning. So I get a boost in the morning. So this is shiitake. Shiitake is sold in the grocery stores. So that's probably one of the more familiar mushrooms with anyone that's eaten mushrooms. It has kind of an earthy taste to it, but everyone, meaty texture itself. I make shiitake burgers. I won't use the stem. I will dehydrate that and I'll powder it and I'll use it in my soups or for my mushroom coffee blend because shiitake itself, it's good for the kidneys. It's the highest mushroom in B vitamins or B12 vitamin. Actually, oyster, I meant to say oyster mushroom actually has the highest B vitamins of all the mushrooms. It hits almost every one of them. So, a lot of us are lacking B vitamins as well as vitamin D, and that's what mushrooms provide is another way of getting those nutrients to us. Because you don't find it in some food these days, a lot of the food in grocery stores especially. So this is these are a couple of mushrooms that when I was talking about the mycorrhizal mushrooms. So these mushrooms are dependent on the environment and the ecosystem around them in order to produce fruit. So last year I went out to Colorado to Telluride Mushroom Festival, and this is the King Bolete or the porcini, and people go haywire over this. They're like, porcini, oh my goodness. So I was finding porcinis this big. It was awesome. I came home with about 50 pounds of it, and I put it in a umami blend because I was only able to eat a couple of them because like the part that you do use, changing from Colorado to Arkansas kind of got too hot. So yeah, I ground it up a lot and used it as a powder with my spices and in my coffee blend and soups. It just adds such a flavor to whatever dish you're cooking. Chanterelle is called the bacon of the woods. It's very meaty. Has kind of, I don't know, like I don't really taste or feel bacon with it. Like I feel when I eat it, it's more like an apricot taste to me. But people have said otherwise. So they're orange, and you can tell that they're fleshing a mile away because they're just very, very colorful. Those actually produce in June, late July and some of August. They just went out of season really well because we've had so much dry weather too. And this is morels. I'm not sure I still haven't been able to forage yet. So, if I'm not able to forage or grow it, I don't eat it. So, so morels are one of the tastiest mushrooms, people would say. So yeah, they are dependent on the ecosystem around them, the weather that year, everything else too. Like this year in Colorado, there were no king boll leaves out there because it's been a dry summer. So if you don't have moisture, you don't have the right temperatures, mushrooms won't produce. So this is the parasitic mushroom. This is cordyceps. So I just went to a conference out in Pennsylvania, MyGoFest, and the guy that was putting it on, William Padilla Brown, I met him at the Organic Growers School 4 years ago, and he was just starting, it's 5 years ago, anyways, he was just starting off his business with cordyceps. And, the more we dive deep into mushrooms, I've learned more about this awesome mushroom. It's used for energy. Athletes use it as an energy enhancer. Instead of, going to other amino acid drinks or whatnot, they'll start taking cordyceps. You can put it with lion's mane and reishi, and it's a great adaptogen blend for anyone that is dealing with certain ailments, being, if you're tired or like MS even, it can be used to dial down on some of the effects of it. So yes, this is a caterpillar. So it is growing out of a caterpillar. So that is it being that it grows on a living host as well. Yes, mushrooms grow on buds too. And they've started to grow them out of like eggshells, egg and eggshell, and a couple of different other ways, getting that they get the nutrients right for it. So I went over a little bit about this, but there's more of a layout on for visual. So oyster mushrooms, so they do have kind of a chicken flavor too, but some, if you look it up, a lot of your books and YouTube will say like seafoody taste. But I tell you, if you leave it in a bag and leave it in your car for over a day, you'll definitely smell that seafood taste, or that seafood smell. So lion's mane, some people make lion's mane steaks. As I was saying, like tearing the lion's mane, you can make like lion's mane crab cakes, but some people will cut it and, they'll just put the whole mushroom like on the grill or marinate it beforehand, something to that effect. I also use air fryers. A lot of my customers that, they come to me and say, how do you cook it? And, I'll ask them and we'll go back and forth on it. And I've had so many people say that they use their air fryers for cooking up mushrooms. So, easy way to do it. Shiitake, unique flavor. I love shiitake burgers. King Trumpet. I grew King Trumpet in the cooler months, and I will have it again soon. But I was making scallops out of it. You can use the whole mushroom, and I don't eat meat. I rarely eat meat, so I always try to find a diverse way of cooking with mushrooms to trick my brain into thinking it's something else. Chanterelles, bacon at the woods, enoki. That's another one that I do grow, and some of y'all probably heard about that. It's in the Asian stores. It is gelatinous and being like it has kind of like what okra has, like that mucilaginous texture to it. It's kind of like that. So I add it to my soups and stews, but I put it in eggs one time, and I don't think I'm gonna do It was just a little too much for me. So I tell people, you can test the waters on it, but it's kind of slimy. Chestnut, it has a nutty flavor, a chewy texture. It remains kind of crunchy after you cook it. Very neat mushroom. I will have those as well at the booth this fall and winter. So we know a little bit about this, but I could expand forever on what mushrooms do for us. So this is a little bit of a breakdown on it. Many of our foods don't give us the trace minerals that we need. Y'all as gardeners know that a lot of plants don't get trace minerals. So it's important to use like mushroom compost and worm castings to be able to have trace minerals provided for the plants. As well as vitamins. So all of your spectrum of vitamins, mushrooms are able to give that to you. So protein. So that is another reason that I can use mushrooms as a substitute for meat because it has so much protein in it. So that's actually, for the fiber, the reishi has up to 85% of our daily intake. Shiitake is 35%. But I believe the protein with shiitake, I think it's upwards of like 20% of what we should have for a day. So that just goes to show you, yes, you can live on mushrooms. So all of your B vitamins, zinc, copper, iron, magnesium, manganese, you go down the list, mushrooms are able to provide that. They're low in carbohydrates, and a lot of us always say, I need to cut out the carbohydrates. Well, if you do, you can add in some mushrooms and substitute for that. So it's also high in macro minerals, being phosphorus and potassium. Beta-glucans and triterpenes, that's something that one of the first things that I learned with making remedies from mushrooms was I needed to know how to extract it from the mushrooms. So beta-glucans are what's extracted through water. They are a polysaccharide chain. So the reason that I talk about putting your mushroom, like cooking your mushrooms or putting it in hot water, heating it some way, breaking it down, also gives the mushrooms a chance to give your body more beta-glucans to make it more bioavailable for us. Triterpenes, that's what I extract through alcohol. You can do vinegar and oil. I'm learning a little bit more about that now. I haven't really played around too much with it yet, so I'm not going to expand too much on that. But that is the compound that is the antiviral and for anti-inflammation. So beta-glucans really deals with all of the immune system responses. So they're immunomodulating, so in being that they can change up our immune system. So Agostrol, that's a cell wall component that when exposed to sunlight, so when the gills are exposed to sunlight, like if I take the mushrooms out of the grow, because right now I'm using natural lighting, but I was using artificial lighting. And I learned that with artificial lighting, I wasn't getting as many vitamins as I could get out of my mushrooms. So in order to do that, I would put it out in the sunlight for 30 to 60 minutes. I normally do like 20 to 30, something like that. And it converts it into vitamin D. So you get more vitamin D that way. So, and I just made a note, there's different methods of processing mushrooms for various different reasons. And being that, you can use alcohol as a solvent, water, and oil or vinegar. Mm-hmm. All right, and this was a good quote I took out of Radical Mycology book that is up here for y'all to see at the end. These are books that I carry around with me all the time. Just if I've got a question that people ask me and I don't know, I can find it here. But it has such a connection to me, and so I wanted to put it on here. But humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together, all things connect. So mushrooms connect not only the trees and the plants, but they also connect us. So, it's so important to know about that mycelium network and the expansion of what mushrooms can do for the whole world. So, now it's time for questions and answers. Now we're going to go about mushrooms a little bit. So, who's got some questions? Okay.
Well, I've heard of some mushrooms being poisonous. How do you differentiate?
Well, there's not a particular way you can, except the most easiest way of doing it is doing the spore print. So the spore print is really like that's the indicator, that's the fingerprint to say what it is. But there are certain poisonous mushrooms or toxic mushrooms that have the same, spore print color. Because you're looking at that color in order to say, okay, is this, this or this? And also going into the woods with the mycologist. There is the Arkansas Mycological Association or Society. Jay Justice runs it. He is wonderful. He will go through the forest and he'll tell you all about the genus and species, and he'll go through eating some mushrooms and you're like, oh, what that is? But he knows what he's doing. He's been doing it for years. But it's something you just have to not eat mushrooms when you go out in the forest and then learn from your mycologist. So
I noticed in the grocery stores, there's usually just 2 varieties of mushrooms.
Mhm.
So where do you find all of these different mushrooms?
So I am an avid forager, but and I'll go to different states and I'll go and forage different mushrooms with a foraging group. They have forays at these conferences and whatnot, but it's also just something that I've learned along the way. The variety of mushrooms, I would say, come to the farmer's market. Eventually, I will have more. We're expanding our operation right now, but we will have a wide variety of mushrooms 2 or 3 months down the line. But besides that, there's not really an option right now. My good friend Jess, who was in Little Rock, he is no longer with us, and I would say to go to him, but there's no one else really doing this right now. A couple of people, retail sales, but even then, I'm always scheduled. So yes, but I sell a variety of mushrooms at the farmer's market. I not only do Hot Springs, but I do surrounding areas. And if I can do retail sales, I do, but it's mostly I'm telling people to get to the market.
Then the Asian stores have some.
Have dried, yeah, mostly dried. They have some fresh, yep. But always know where your source comes from, because just even the food and grocery store sprayed and whatnot. So it's So you can get it from some of the Asian grocery stores, and I'm not familiar with them. If you are, you can tell her about some of them. For sure.
I've heard about some of them. I had a cousin that married a girl from Taiwan,
Oh yeah,
and she's really was into this.
very neat.
So if we wanted to grow our own mushrooms, where do we find this mushroom spore to put in water?
Well, so it's a really elaborated answer to this question, but the most easiest answer to that is, so I provide spawn bags for people, And so you'll buy the swan bag. And then what I do is I will, and this is what I'll go over at my workshop, I'll go over how to plug a log and how to, where to put it and how to harvest it, how to prepare it. And then you'll go home with a log and you'll be able to, have fruit in 6 to 9 months, depending on the variety. But the bag method, you can also buy bags from me. And so you can take home the bag yourself and you can grow it on your countertop. I have a couple of bags in random places just to see like how it grows in different areas. So just provided light, giving it some mist every day, and oxygen, you can grow mushrooms out of the bag yourself.
Do you have those bags at the farmer's market?
I will eventually, about 2 to 3 weeks. We're expanding our operation right now, so we've been busy in the process of building a warehouse. So eventually I will have bags. I was selling bags, but we've been busy with the build, so I haven't been able to make any extra right now, but I will. Yes. All right, ready here?
Oh, yeah, I was wondering, so I see a lot in like foraging groups on Facebook pretty much, talking about, leaving enough of a mushroom that it can reproduce. Is that something that is a trait of certain varieties of mushrooms, or do all mushrooms kind of, like if you don't take them all, is it just that they can produce more spores, or do the mushrooms themselves continue growing? Like if it's more of a spreading mushroom?
Good question. Yeah. So yes, leaving enough behind will give it more surface area in order to be able to spore out more. So that's why you leave about 10% behind. It does have, like, if you find it on logs, it will have the material, the mycelium in the log itself. But sometimes the food source is already eaten up. And so it needs something else. And so in that transition, that's where the spores come in. And so as long as it spores out, it's able to reproduce and produce more hyphae, which produce the mycelium. Okay.
Is there any difference between a mycelium, like brick, and a swan bag?
So what do you mean by mycelium brick? Like a myceliated spawn bag? Yeah. No, that's the same.
Okay.
Myceliated spawn bag. Yep.
I grew from like spore with a strain that was kind of nightmarish. I also half of it was really hard to keep it clean, but I figured if you're going straight from myceliums, mixing it with wood chips, probably a lot less at risk of contamination.
Just depends. There's a lot of factors, your environment being above all, and how you take care of it, as well. But, so yeah, like, with the swan bags, like we use agar. You can use liquid culture, but liquid culture, you have more of a variable of getting, other pathogens and funguses that are going to try to compete with the fungus itself.
Yeah.
With the agar method, we found that it works a little better to put onto the wood and grain that we pasteurize or sterilize. Yep. Yes.
Is it like seasonal, certain mushrooms you have at certain times of the year? It's not just any time, everything's available?
So so there's like 2 answers to that. So out in the forest, yes, very seasonal. As long as you've got your environment down and tapped in, when you're growing indoors, you can do anything you want. Like with king trumpet and some of the blue oyster, they fruited at 60, 65. And then oyster lion's mane, they kind of like it a little bit warmer. So I would just enclose a space off for the more colder variants, and I would, provide a little bit more protection from the heat from them. So, but you can grow any mushroom throughout the year in a contained environment.
So where will we be able to see when you have whatever you have available? Where do we go?
Okay, so I am in the process of getting my website up and going. But I do post to Garland of Love 501 on Facebook and Instagram as to what I'll have for the week. I did not do that this week, rather I had this to work this week. But also the Hot Springs Farmers Market, the website, it'll tell you which vendors will be there for the week. And so you can go there, see what vendors are there, and I always put, what varieties I'll have. But if I have anything up and coming, I'll always try to post about it. But you're welcome to message me, and I don't have another source on mushrooms just yet. But, anything that we didn't have going on, I would try to source from my friend. And so figuring that out. How I can have it all.
Talk about what you bought. How would you prepare the lion's mushroom? How would you fix that to eat?
So I shred it, but a lot of people just chop it with a knife and like make steaks or cut it up in little pieces like that. But it's a tooth mushroom. I know I didn't really go over like the tooth variety, but it is a tooth mushroom. So it has kind of like strands of hair that come down.
Well, I just saw about 3 of these in my daughter's yard yesterday.
Well, so this is oyster.
Oh,
Right
that's
here.
the oyster?
Mhm.
Okay, then
Yeah.
how do you fix that?
So you can thinly slice it up, put it in butter, olive oil, or you can do even a dry pan fry on it. But I put it in just about anything. So if you got something that you're putting in the oven, just put them in there. Don't wash them unless they're really buggy. But even if they're buggy, I just kind of pluck them out, But yeah, they are water soluble, so they will intake that water. And you have to like cook it off a little. So yeah.
Are mushrooms very susceptible to pests?
So actually, good question. I meant to go over this. So there are bugs that love them. Yes, if they're outside in the forest, you'll find the pleasing fungus beetle that will normally eat a lot of the mushroom up before you get it. You only have a couple of days after it fruits out in the forest to harvest it at its prime. But you can actually use mushrooms as like a natural way to deter pests from your garden and help disease management. So, yeah.
What about death cap mushrooms? I don't know the actual word for them, but I see it, I feel like I see a lot of those in our yard, and they would be popping up a lot.
Just donate
Yeah. They look kind of like those, as well,
it. Yeah,
but they're very similar, and we have a lot of them.
yeah. It's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was just, I just heard a story about a family and like it was a well-known forager. They made a dish and had the death cap in there, thought it was the patty straw mushroom, and it wasn't, and 3 out of 4 died.
Yeah, so be careful.
So be careful, there are stories like that, I don't want to scare anyone away, but
All white skinny mushrooms, be very, very careful.
yeah, definitely be careful about it. But it's not gonna hurt your animals or anything like that, well, unless they eat it.
Yeah, we have a lot of like farm animals, and do you know like where it grows, like what kind of substrate? Because I've noticed that these are growing in a bunch of like pine straw.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking we have probably 45 of them in one area, so.
Yeah, they just spore it out and
Okay.
whatnot, but it's not bad, it's good for
Yeah, no,
the,
I'm leaving them there, we
soil.
don't have animals in there, but when I was younger, I think I had a dog get a hold of one and he didn't live.
it'll attack the liver and, yeah, you got
So you have
to.
to be careful. We were keeping them around the yard for bugs, but.
Yeah, yeah, fun, you got the good and you got the bad.
You said something about putting it on paper and getting the print. Where do you find what colors are good and what colors are not?
So it's something you can refer to books or YouTube, or ask your local mycologist. I use Facebook. There's if I can think of it, it's the mycologist. Are you familiar?
Yeah, okay, so Jay Justice and Jay Pitts and Carrie McCabe,
Yes,
they are like the.
the trio.
Yeah, the big ones that are there, are like the monitors of. If you take a photograph of something you want to know, you want the top, you want the underside, you want photographs, post them to their site, ask the question, and they can give you a pretty good educated guess as to what you got.
And they're pretty immediate with it too. They're always paying attention. So they're with the Arkansas Mycological Society. And I'll look up on Facebook. There's a page for them that you can post it to. I'm just not thinking of it right now, but if I'm out in the forest and I'm like, what is this? Like, I think it's good, but I don't know. I always upload it to there, and they're pretty immediate.
Is there an application, I guess, aside from composting, I guess would be good, but is there an application for toxic mushrooms? I mean, you can't eat them, but is there a reason why you would forage them or use them for anything aside from poisoning someone? Not that.
Good question.
Obviously, but not that.
That's a good question. You know,
I might not even be.
so not that I have studied or heard,
Okay.
but it's something I will research after this for sure. So
But
yeah,
they are okay to compost, right? Like if you had 45 of them in your yard, you could
yeah, you can
compost them
compost
up for your garden. Okay.
Won't that reproduce them?
It will reproduce them, but you can use it as compost in a certain area.
Yeah.
You know, but all mushrooms are gonna add trace minerals to the soil. So, and build the network with, the loose matter and organic material to build that soil. So yeah, I don't know the balance of that, but I will dive more into that. Good question. All right.
So I had a bunch of raspberries deal with cane blight this year. I'm looking into like fungi to remediate this situation. I came across trichoderma. Do you know anything about that?
So trichoderma is a green mold. So all plants have it. It's something that mushrooms are susceptible to in the grow as well. It's like a bad thing in a commercial grow. You're like, if you got trichoderma, it's like, get it out. But it is good for plants otherwise out, in nature. So what is your?
It feeds on other fungi, doesn't it? Is it like?
It does. And that's why it's a bad thing in the commercial grow. But it's
Good for plants, bad for fungi.
right.
So it's like
Right, yeah, but good for plants, like plants
Yeah.
need it. So yeah, not a bad thing, but in the commercial grow, yes.
There are several ladies in our village that are picking red mushrooms. Are those good to eat?
They're probably, I'm not gonna say probably, they may be the chanterelles, the orange that I was showing, but
Red.
there's a cinnabar as well that is a more red. It is in the same family.
It's a chanterelle.
Yeah, it's a cantarellus, but it's not the chanterelle, the golden that I showed up here. But yeah, they're more tiny. But again, something to, upload to Facebook and like, what is this before you eat it? Because there are certain ones that, there's not many lookalikes to chanterelles, but there is a couple. And I'm going blank on the name right now. There's a jack-o'-lantern, yeah, but it's more, the way that it grows is different in comparison to the chanterelle, but yes. Yeah, stay away from the jack-o'-lantern.
Pass the whole process. If you got 9 out of 10 identifiers, that last one might kill you.
Yeah.
You know, where all the other stuff checked out, but the spore print's the wrong color. That means it's something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so again,
Okay.
so going back to that spore print, having a piece of paper with you when you go out in the forest or whatnot, and just saying, hey, I'm gonna see a little bit about what this is, what I think it is. So,
The little rhyme, there are old mushroom hunters, there are bold mushroom hunters, but there are no old, bold mushroom hunters.
yeah. That is it. All right, who else has any questions? No, yeah, one in the back.
Best mushroom to grow in the garden.
I would say oyster. Oyster is the most prevalent. They'll just keep on popping up. I have used Bluet and the wine cap. I'm not thinking of the genus right now. Which wine cap is good, but you can't eat it over an extensive amount of time, whereas oyster you can. Wine cap can, Paul Stammet says he doesn't eat it over like 3 or 4 days, I think, because it will build up in your system. So, yeah, I would say oyster for that. For sure.
There's one of them that you have to be, I think was the Inky cap, because Jay was talking about not drinking wine and having it with those
Right.
because it can have an interaction. So there are a few species that alcohol with a meal and a mushroom and not so good.
Yeah, which if you're putting any other compounds in your body, like alcohol or otherwise, you always kind of want to question, like, is this good or bad for me? Is this too much? But yes, yeah, I just read that as well. I think it was on one of his posts. But yeah, there was someone else with a question. Okay.
Yeah, when it comes to turkey tail, I assume they're like everywhere in Arkansas. I mean, they're pretty easy. I'm assuming you don't grow those, you just forage for them.
So right now, I will be growing them though. You can grow them out of bags. I have a lot of clients and customers that use it as medicine. So I need more of it and I can't forage them.
So are you able to like take a log that they're growing on and just plunk it down in like a basin?
Yeah,
And have it produce like fat or meat or what?
you got it. Yep.
Cool.
Yep, that's how I first started. I would just, if I saw a log, I'd ask Mother, Eric, how can I take this and put it at my farm? And, she replied and I would take it to the farm and, I, had inventory, a good amount of inventory, to provide some medicine for people. So yes, not one that you eat in food, like gourmet food. It's not really like a gourmet mushroom. It's more of the medicinal components that you use for turkey tail.
So a lot of the guys that use it and do it in quantity, they'll make like dry it and use it in teas.
Yes.
Make tail tea.
Yeah.
Kind of pick,
Yep, yeah, and it's pretty good. It doesn't have so much of a mushroomy flavor. But yes, there are some lookalikes though. So like the violet tooth polypore, that is one that you'll think is turkey tail, but it's different. So I tried Chaptum biform. So yeah, there's another one too that I'm not thinking of. That's
Stereo.
Yes, stereo, Austrian. Yes. So,
Are there any medicinal benefits to woodier mushrooms?
there is. It's actually an anticoagulant. You can use it to thin out your blood. So I don't use it unless people need that mushroom, but I do put it in my soups. It is really good. And the first time I cooked with it, I put it on a flat pan and it started jumping out of the pan. I was like, what is this jumping mushroom? But as the heat expands in it, if you don't like cut it up or anything, it will start to go places. So, but it is really good in soups. Good question. Have you found some wood here?
Yeah, we have like a couple bags of dry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, down at 501 Prime, Jake, he uses it in a couple of his dishes. So as long as you have a little amount of it and not an absorbent amount, it's kind of like some plants, as long as you have a little and not a lot and everything in moderation, it's not bad for you. Yeah, awesome. Other questions? Okay, yes.
I had, as a gift a few years ago, someone sent me in a box with the mushrooms, but it's been like 2 or 3 years. Is that still any good to use?
Good question. It may be.
Just try it.
I would try it, yeah. See.
I just found it. But
I actually did, bought some for my granddaughter, whose
Uh-huh.
favorite mushrooms, for her birthday. And yes, and I have some pictures on my phone that she was thrilled because I can show you. And they're online, you just go to Amazon and you'll find them and you can get one box. They're not terribly expensive, so it's fun. And she was thrilled with the whole
Well, I had
idea.
done it when it was new, but when I got a new one, but this one has been sitting, we've moved, so it's been sitting for 2 or 3 years. And I
Oh.
just didn't know if it'd be any.
I
good.
don't know that answer, but I do know you can get them on.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
make
and
great
then-
gifts. They're really fun.
It may have used up, so it's probably, if anything's lacking, it's gonna be the moisture in it. So if the moisture is dried up in the bag and it doesn't have enough, what you can do is you can take an old block, you can still cut it, and then I use like a turkey, yes, and the syringe, yep, and I'll inject the block with water. So I'll start to hydrate the block again, and then it'll start to feed into that, and then it'll start to pop again. It's not gonna be as big, but it will still work.
And one of Jay's pet peeves with people showing these pictures, oh, it's a chaga. No, they don't grow here. It's not
Right.
chaga, it's not here.
So, good, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, some of these mushrooms up here, I had a good friend, bring me this from New York, and it is chaga. So chaga takes over 30 years to grow, approximately. It grows on yellow and paper birch, so.
Well, we have river birch, but we don't have the tree that it grows on.
Right. So, it's, a lot of times it's found in the Northwest, Northeast, like New York, Maine, Massachusetts, stuff like that. But, chaga is, very rich in antioxidants as well as, reishi, like woody, mushrooms are higher in antioxidants. So, yes, and this is just like some reishi that's, this is my starting process before I grind it up. I'll dry it out and I'll just kind of break it up. And from this being the start of it, and then I'll use a grinder to grind it because that makes the cell walls be able to expand more and break down more so you can have the nutrients more available for you.
Do you dry it in a dehydrator or do you do it naturally?
So I like to use anything natural, as natural as I can go, I do. If someone needs something fast and I need to use my dehydrator, I'll use it. Or if I feel like it's too wet, I need to get some moisture off, because what will happen with the trichoderma, I found some reishi about a month or so ago when we had all that rain, and I let it sit out for a little bit to dry out. And another reason for like breaking it down like this and not letting it just sit like this when it's wet is, and it started to get trichoderma on it, which is a green mold. And I was like, oh, well, that is something. And so it just, I started making a correlation with that.
So you're saying you break it down sometimes while it's still a little moist if need be, and that's okay? All right.
You got it. Yeah, it's easier actually to break it whenever it's a little moist because it gets so hard. And you're like, what is this? I'm gonna have to get my hacksaw out. So like this mushroom, this is a sclerotium mushroom. It's called Wilporia. It's inside. Found this out in Crystal Springs area. And this actually grows off the root of a hardwood tree, oak. I do not believe it grows on any softwood. Most of your mushrooms do not grow on softwood, it's just hardwood. But I had to use a hacksaw in order to break this down. But this is actually a fungus. I mean, it was Jay Justice that was like, what is this, Jay? He was like, you found that? And I was like, yes, he said, that he's from poria. So, sometimes you'll see with mushroom tinctures poria, and that's this mushroom itself. So, yes, and this is like how I tincture. Like I'll start off using alcohol. I'll do a 4 to 6 week extraction in alcohol. And these are already done. These are already double extracted. And then I'll extract in water after the alcohol is finished. I'll do a 2-hour cook off on the water part of the extraction. Yeah. And then like
alcohol.
I actually use a local, it's called Rock City, I believe. It's not a Little Rock, but it's vodka. 80 to 100 proof, somewhere in there.
Yeah, you're very alcohol.
Yeah, pure grain, yeah.
So what does that mean? You extract it into alcohol, then at the end you add water and then cook off the alcohol?
So I'll keep it separate. So I strain it out of alcohol, and then I'll have that jar, and then I'll do my 2-hour extraction with water. And then after I'm done with the extraction, I'll let it cool down. And then once it's cooled down, then I'll do a 50-50 ratio on the alcohol to water. So then you're getting the beta glucans and the triterpenes, as well as other compounds, but those are your main two that you're using for your immune system and inflammation and viruses. Yeah. Who else? No other questions?
Can you still use any part of the mushroom after you've extracted that stuff? Like, what can you use your mush for after that?
Right. So like this morning, I had done a double extraction last night, and I used it for my coffee this morning. Like I call reishi my coffee because I'm not trying to get off coffee. So I'm trying to like correlate that. But yeah, you can use it, dependent on how long you did the extraction and how much you have in there. It can still be used for like a second time. I don't use it over that. Normally, like if I'm making medicine out of it, I just use it for one extraction, but for myself, I'll use the double extraction. So yeah, good question. All right. So no one else has any questions? No? All right. Well, thank y'all so much for coming.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you all for coming.